I was standing at my kitchen sink on a Tuesday afternoon, washing a casserole dish I'd eaten from alone the night before, when my daughter showed up at my door with 2 rolling suitcases, and my grandchildren trailing behind her like confused refugees. "You don't do anything anyway. Watch my kids this summer." She didn't let me answer, didn't ask, didn't explain, just thrust the bags into my hands, climbed back into her SUV, and drove away. The door closed. She was gone. And I was standing on my porch in Southeast Portland with an 8-year-old and an 11-year-old who barely knew me, staring at me like I was supposed to have answers. I'm 62 years old. My husband died 2 years ago, and since then I've been going through the motions of a life that stopped meaning anything. Volunteer work I don't care about. A house that's too quiet. Routines that fill time but not purpose. My daughter was right about one thing. I don't do anything. Not anything that matters. But for the next 8 weeks, I had 2 kids who needed more than I knew how to give. Mason, the 8-year-old, woke up with nightmares every night, crying for a mother who'd abandoned him without a second thought. Harper, 11 going on 30, carried anger like a second skin. Anger at her mom. Anger at the life she was missing. Anger at being dumped with a grandmother she'd seen maybe 5 times in her entire childhood. I didn't know what to do with them. I didn't know what to do with myself. So I did the only thing I could think of. I started clearing the garden beds my dead husband built years ago. The ones I'd let go to weeds and neglect because what was the point of growing tomatoes when you're eating casserole alone at the kitchen counter? Mason helped me dig in the dirt. Harper watched from the porch, pretending not to care, until eventually she couldn't help herself and joined us. We planted tomatoes in the June heat, sunflowers along the fence, herbs in terracotta pots that we watered every morning like a ritual. And something strange started happening. The kids stopped asking when their mom was coming back. They stopped staring at their phones waiting for texts that never came. They learned to cook real food, to paint, to sit with silence without needing it filled. They started to look at me like I was a person, not just a placeholder. And I started to remember who I used to be. Before I was someone's wife. Before I was someone's mother. Before I became the woman who always said yes. Who made herself small. Who believed her only value was in how useful she could be to other people. I found my old art supplies in a box in the closet. Paintbrushes I'd packed away 38 years ago when life got too busy for dreams. I set up an easel in the backyard. I painted the garden, the kids' hands covered in dirt, the view from the porch at sunset. I painted like I was excavating something buried. Then Bryn called from Greece, because of course she was in Greece on some romantic vacation with her boyfriend, posting sunset photos while her children had nightmares an ocean away. And when I told her what she'd done wasn't fair, when I finally said what I'd been too afraid to say for 40 years, she turned it back on me. "Maybe this is finally your chance to be the mother you never were to me." The words landed like a physical blow. All those years, I'd worked myself to exhaustion, raised her alone after her father left, sacrificed everything I wanted so she could have what she needed. And this was how she saw me, as someone who hadn't been there, as someone who'd failed her. I could have collapsed under that guilt, could have spent the rest of the summer apologizing, explaining, defending, but I didn't. Because sitting in my kitchen with my grandchildren eating pancakes we'd made together, watching them check the garden every morning to see what had grown overnight, seeing them become kids instead of anxious, neglected shadows, I realized something. I had been there. Every single day of Bryn's life, I'd been there in the ways that counted. And if she couldn't see it, that was her tragedy, not mine. So I stopped answering her calls, stopped managing her feelings, stopped making myself smaller so she could feel bigger. And I kept painting, kept gardening, kept showing Mason and Harper that a life well lived isn't about busyness or obligation. It's about presence, about patience, about the quiet courage of starting over, even at 62, even when everyone expects you to stay small. The tomatoes grew heavy on their vines. The sunflowers reached 9 feet tall. The kids filled notebooks with recipes and stories and observations about how things change when you pay attention. And then August came. Bryn texted that she was coming home, that she couldn't wait to see the kids, that she'd missed them so much, though her Instagram told a different story. All Greek islands and engagement rings and a life where her children were conspicuously absent. When she showed up at my door, tanned and relaxed and completely oblivious, I knew immediately. She hadn't changed. She saw the bags packed and ready, saw the kids who'd spent 8 weeks growing into themselves, and all she could talk about was her wedding plans, her next trip, her life that had no room for the messy reality of motherhood. She didn't ask them about their summer. Didn't notice Mason's drawing of our garden, or Harper's notebooks, or the jar of tomato sauce we'd made from the plants we'd grown together. She just hustled them into her SUV and drove away, back to her pristine house with white furniture that couldn't tolerate the mess of childhood, back to the life where her kids were accessories she could pick up and put down as convenience allowed. And I stood in my doorway and watched them go, and my heart broke. But not for me, for them, for what they were going back to, for the mother who loved them but couldn't see them, for the childhood that was slipping away while Bryn was too busy chasing some idea of happiness that had nothing to do with the people who needed her most. The house felt enormous in their absence. I walked through rooms that echoed again, touched things they'd touched, cried in the garden we'd built together. But I also knew something I hadn't known before the summer started. I wasn't done. I'd spent 62 years being the woman who said yes to everyone else. This summer, I'd finally learned to say yes to myself, to my art, to my needs, to my right to take up space in the world. 3 days later, Harper texted me a photo of the tomato sauce sitting on their kitchen counter. Mom says it tastes weird. I think it tastes like summer. And I knew. What we'd built together couldn't be taken away. Not by distance. Not by Bryn's inability to see it. Not by the ending of summer. Because I'd shown them something their mother never could. That it's possible to begin again. That good things can grow even in neglected soil. That presence is the greatest gift you can give another person. When Bryn called 6 weeks later asking if I could take the kids again, another trip, another escape, I said yes. Not because I was obligated. Not because I had nothing else to do. But because I'd found my purpose. And it was this. Being the person who shows up, who stays, who sees them. I made the beds in the guest room with fresh sheets. I pulled out the art supplies. I checked the garden for seeds we could plant in spring. And I waited. Not as someone's backup plan. Not as the grandmother who didn't do anything anyway. But as Linda Carmichael, artist, gardener, woman who'd finally learned her own worth, ready for whatever came next. The doorbell rang at 2:47 on a Tuesday afternoon, and I was elbow-deep in sudsy water, scrubbing the casserole dish I'd used to make chicken tetrazzini the night before. A dinner I'd eaten alone, standing at the counter, watching a rerun of some home renovation show I wasn't really paying attention to. That's how most of my days went since Robert died. Small tasks stretched out to fill the hours, meals that didn't require setting the table, silence that had stopped feeling temporary and started feeling like furniture. I dried my hands on the dish towel, the one with the faded strawberries that Bryn gave me maybe 15 Christmases ago, and headed for the front door. Through the frosted glass panel, I could make out a familiar silhouette. Tall, angular, impatient, even in stillness. My daughter. I opened the door with what I thought was a smile ready, but Bryn didn't even look at my face. She was already turning back toward her silver SUV, one hand gesturing vaguely behind her. "Mom, I need a huge favor," she said, her voice carrying that particular pitch she used when she'd already made up her mind and was just going through the formality of asking. That's when I saw them. Mason and Harper standing on my porch like refugees, each gripping the handle of a rolling suitcase that looked bigger than they were. Mason's Spider-Man backpack hung crooked on his shoulders. Harper was staring at her phone, thumb scrolling mechanically, her face that blank expression kids get when they're pretending not to care about something that's scaring them. "Bryn?" I started, but she was already hauling 2 more bags out of the trunk. She power-walked back up the path. She always moved like she was late for something, and thrust the bags toward me. I took them automatically, the way I'd been taking things from her for 40 years. The handles cut into my palms. "You don't do anything anyway, watch my kids this summer," she said. Not a question. A statement. Maybe even an accusation. I opened my mouth. I had so many questions they tangled together on my tongue. What do you mean the summer? Where are you going? Did you talk to Mason's doctor about his... But Bryn was already back in the SUV. The engine was running. She lowered her window just enough to call out, "I'll text you details. You're a lifesaver, Mom. Love you." The window went up. The SUV reversed. And just like that, she was gone, turning left onto Hawthorne Boulevard and disappearing into the afternoon traffic. I stood there holding 2 suitcases that smelled like fabric softener and something else. Something like the inside of a new car. The bags were heavy. Or maybe my arms were just weak. I looked down at Mason and Harper. They looked back at me with identical expressions of resigned bewilderment, like they'd been through this before and knew better than to complain. "Hi, Grandma," Mason said quietly. "Hey, sweetheart." My voice came out steadier than I felt. I glanced at Harper, who hadn't looked up from her phone once. Harper? Hey. She didn't meet my eyes. The afternoon sun was brutal, that thick heat Portland gets in June that shimmers off the pavement and makes everything feel slow and sticky. Across the street, Mrs. Chen was watering her roses. She waved. I waved back automatically, then ushered the kids inside before any of the neighbors could see the confused panic I was sure was written all over my face. The house swallowed us into its cool dimness. I'd kept the curtains drawn against the heat, so the living room had that underwater quality, greenish light filtering through the old lace panels I'd never gotten around to replacing. The kids stood in the entryway like visitors, which I suppose they were. They'd been here for Christmas, maybe Easter, always just for a few hours, always with Bryn orchestrating everything, checking her watch, hurrying them along. You guys hungry? I asked, defaulting to the only role I knew how to play. Mason nodded. Harper shrugged, which I'd learned was teenager for, yes, but I'm not going to admit it. I led them into the kitchen, the heart of the house, Robert used to say, though after he died, it felt more like a museum I wandered through, touching things that used to mean something. The ceramic rooster he'd bought at a yard sale, the wooden spoon rest I'd made in a pottery class I'd taken to fill a Saturday. The calendar on the wall still turned to May, even though we were a week into June. I pulled open the fridge, leftover tetrazzini, some wilted lettuce, yogurt that might be expired, a block of cheddar cheese, not exactly the spread you'd prepare for grandchildren you didn't know were coming. How about grilled cheese? I offered. And tomato soup? Okay, Mason said. He'd climbed onto one of the kitchen chairs and was swinging his legs, his sneakers lighting up with each kick. Those shoes probably cost more than my electric bill. Harper finally looked up from her phone. Do you have any vegan cheese? Vegan cheese, I repeated, like she'd asked me if I had any moon rocks. She sighed, a gust of pure adolescent exasperation. Never mind. I'll just eat the soup. I got to work, pulling out the cast iron skillet, the butter dish, the bread from the bread box that still had Robert's fingerprints on the latch if you looked closely enough. I moved through the familiar motions, butter on bread, cheese sliced thick, heat on medium so it wouldn't burn, while my mind spun in smaller and smaller circles. What had Bryn meant? The summer? The whole summer? And where was she going that she needed to dump her kids without even a conversation? I pulled my phone from my pocket and checked for texts. Nothing. I called her, straight to voicemail. The butter sizzled. I pressed the sandwiches down with the spatula, watching the bread turn golden. Grandma? Mason's voice was small. Are we staying here a long time? I turned to look at him. 8 years old, round face, freckles across his nose, hair that stuck up in the back no matter how much you smoothed it. He had Robert's eyes. That same soft brown that always looked a little sad, even when he smiled. I think so, honey. For a little while. How long is a while? Harper asked, still scrolling. I wondered what she was looking at. Pictures of her friends doing summer things she was missing? Messages about parties she wouldn't attend? I don't know yet, I admitted. Honesty felt like the only tool I had. Your mom didn't exactly give me the full schedule. Harper made a sound that might have been a laugh or might have been something darker. Yeah, that sounds like her. I wanted to defend Bryn. That instinct was still there, even after everything, but I couldn't find the words. Maybe because Harper was right. We ate at the kitchen table, the three of us arranged around one corner like we were conserving space. Mason devoured his sandwich in about 4 bites, tomato soup dribbling down his chin. Harper picked at her bowl, spooning liquid and letting it drip back, over and over. I watched them and tried to remember the last time I'd sat at this table with anyone under the age of 60. So, I said, attempting something like normalcy, what do you guys usually do during summer? Mason perked up. Camp. We go to day camp at the rec center. They have a pool and we do crafts and sometimes we go on field trips. That sounds fun. It is. And then mom picks us up and we go to dinner and then we watch movies and... He stopped, his face falling as he seemed to remember that none of that was happening this summer. Harper set down her spoon with a clank. We're not doing any of that, Mason. Mom's gone. We're stuck here. Harper, I said softly. What? She finally looked at me, really looked, and I saw something behind the teenage armor. Fear, maybe. Or anger. Probably both. It's true, she didn't want to deal with us, so she brought us here. Mason's eyes got shiny. He stared down at his plate. I reached across and put my hand over his. His fingers were sticky with butter. Hey, You're not stuck. You're visiting. And we're going to figure out how to make it a good summer, okay? He nodded, but he didn't look convinced. Harper stood abruptly, chair scraping against the linoleum. Can I go lie down? I'm tired. Of course. Let me show you the room. I led them upstairs, carrying the smaller bags while they dragged their suitcases bump by bump up the steps. The guest room was at the end of the hall, past the bathroom with the pink tile Robert had always meant to replace, past my bedroom with the door half open showing the unmade bed I'd stopped bothering to fix every morning. The guest room still looked like Bryn's childhood bedroom because I'd never had the heart to change it. Pale purple walls, white furniture, a bulletin board with ribbons from dance competitions she'd won in middle school, a bookshelf with her old Nancy Drew collection and some poetry anthologies from high school. The double bed had a flowered quilt I'd made the year she went to college, thinking she'd take it with her. She never did. You two will share if that's okay, I said. Unless you want me to set up the couch downstairs, Mason. This is fine, he said quickly. He was the kind of kid who didn't want to make trouble. Harper dropped her suitcase and flopped onto the bed face first, phone still clutched in her hand. I stood in the doorway, uncertain. If you need anything, we're good. Harper's muffled voice came from the pillow. Okay, I'll be downstairs. I closed the door gently and stood in the hallway, listening to the old house settle around me. Somewhere, a floorboard creaked. The air conditioner hummed to life. Outside, a car alarm went off, then stopped. Normal sounds, but nothing felt normal. I went back downstairs and sat at the kitchen table with my phone, staring at the screen like I could will it to ring. I called Bryn again. Voicemail. I texted, please call me. We need to talk about this. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally. Sorry, Mom, boarding the plane now. We'll call when I land. You're the best. The plane. She was already on a plane. I set the phone down and pressed my palms against my eyes. The truth was settling over me like sediment in water, slow and heavy. This wasn't a favor. This wasn't a last-minute emergency. This was Bryn doing what she'd always done, making a decision that suited her and expecting everyone else to adjust. You don't do anything anyway. The words cycled through my head. Was that really how she saw me? A woman with so much empty space in her life that filling it with her children for an entire summer was no imposition at all? Maybe she was right. What did I do? I volunteered at St. Anthony's Food Pantry on Thursdays, but they'd told me last month they had too many volunteers. I went to book club once a month, but I could miss a meeting. I kept the house clean, tended a garden I'd let go wild, watched television I didn't care about. I'd become a woman whose life had contracted to the size of these rooms, these routines, these small, safe circles I walked every day. The casserole dish was still in the drying rack, water beating on its glass surface. I picked up the dish towel and dried it carefully, then put it away in the cabinet where it lived. Everything in its place. Everything exactly where it had always been, including me. That first night was strange in the way that new arrangements always are. I made spaghetti for dinner, plain, with butter and Parmesan, because I didn't know what these kids ate and I was too tired to experiment. Mason ate 3 helpings. Harper ate half a bowl and spent the rest of the meal texting someone with furious concentration. House rule, I said, surprising myself. No phones at the table. Harper's head snapped up. Seriously? Seriously? That's so old-fashioned. Maybe, but it's my house, and that's the rule. We stared at each other. I expected a fight, the kind of back and forth I'd watched Bryn lose 1,000 times. But something in Harper's face shifted. She set the phone down next to her plate, screen side down. Fine. We finished the meal in silence, but it was a different kind of silence. The kind where people are actually present with each other, even if they don't have anything to say. After dinner, I let them watch TV while I cleaned up. Through the doorway, I could see them on the couch, Mason tucked under Harper's arm, both staring at some animated movie with bright colors and frenetic music. Harper's phone sat abandoned on the coffee table. She was actually watching. Her hand moved absently through Mason's hair, smoothing it the way I used to smooth Bryn's. Something tightened in my chest. These kids I barely knew. These kids who'd been left with me like luggage. I finished the dishes, wiped down the counters, and poured myself a glass of water. The kitchen window looked out onto the backyard, a 1/4 acre of neglect. The grass was too long. The garden beds were choked with weeds. The apple tree in the corner had branches that needed pruning. Robert had always taken care of the yard. After he died, I'd let it go. What was the point of keeping it nice when no one was there to see it? But now there were children in my house. Children who would be here for weeks, maybe the whole summer. Children who would need more than television and spaghetti. I looked at my reflection in the dark window glass. 62 years old. Gray hair I'd stopped coloring 3 years ago. Lines around my eyes and mouth that used to bother me but now just seemed like evidence of time passing. I looked like someone's grandmother. I looked like someone who didn't do anything anyway. But I also looked like someone who used to be different. Someone who used to have dreams that didn't fit inside a kitchen or a television schedule. Someone who'd wanted things. I turned away from the window and went to check on the kids. I got them to bed around 9. Mason went easily, tired from the emotional upheaval of the day. He asked if I could read him a story, and I found an old copy of Where the Wild Things Are on the bookshelf. His eyes were closed before I finished. Harper was harder. She wanted to stay up, wanted her phone back, wanted to call her mom. I gave her the phone but told her Bryn was probably somewhere over the Atlantic by now. She tried anyway. Voicemail. She tried texting. No response. "She does this," Harper said quietly, sitting on the edge of the bed in her pajamas. An oversized t-shirt with some band logo I didn't recognize. She just disappears, and we're supposed to just deal with it. I sat down next to her. The mattress sank under our combined weight, tilting us slightly toward each other. "I know your mom can be," I searched for the right word, "impulsive. That's a nice way of saying selfish." I wanted to argue, but I couldn't. Not honestly. "She loves you," I tried instead. "I know. That's not the same thing as being there." Harper was 11 years old and already carrying that kind of clarity. It broke something in me. "You're right," I said. "It's not." She looked at me, surprised. "I'm sorry she did this to you," I continued. "Both of you. It wasn't fair and it wasn't right. But you're here now and I'm here and we're going to make the best of it, okay?" She nodded slowly. "Okay. Now get some sleep. We'll figure out tomorrow when it gets here." I stood to leave, but Harper's voice stopped me. "Grandma? Yeah? Do you really not do anything?" The question hit me like cold water. I turned back to look at her. "What do you mean?" "What Mom said, about you not doing anything, is that true?" I could have lied. Could have rattled off my volunteer work, my book club, my errands and chores, and all the small ways I filled my days. But Harper was looking at me with those sharp, knowing eyes, and I realized she deserved better than a comfortable lie. "I don't know," I said honestly. "Maybe it is." She considered this. "That sounds lonely." "Yeah," I said softly. "It is." After I closed their door, I stood in the hallway for a long time, listening to the house breathe around me. Somewhere in the walls, pipes ticked as they cooled. The refrigerator hummed its one-note song. Outside, a car passed, its headlights sweeping across the ceiling through the front window. I went downstairs and poured myself a glass of wine, cheap Pinot Grigio from a box in the fridge, and took it out to the back porch. The night was cooler but still warm. That particular Portland summer warmth that smells like cut grass and barbecue and the faint sweetness of someone's blooming jasmine. I sat in Robert's chair, the Adirondack he'd painted forest green the summer before his heart attack. I used to sit in the matching one next to it, and we'd watch the sun go down without needing to say much. Now I sat in his chair because sitting in mine felt too much like waiting for him to come back. The yard stretched out before me, wild and neglected in the darkness. I thought about Harper's question. "Do you really not do anything?" The truth was worse than what Bryn had said. It wasn't that I didn't do anything. It was that nothing I did mattered. Not to anyone else, and lately, not even to me. I'd become a woman going through motions, filling time, waiting for nothing in particular. When Robert died, everyone said I needed to find a new purpose. Learn a language, take up hiking, travel, date even, though the word felt obscene in my mouth. But I hadn't done any of that. I'd just shrunk, made my world smaller and smaller until it fit inside the boundaries of this house, this block, this carefully managed routine. And now, suddenly, I had 2 children sleeping upstairs. 2 children who needed something from me, though I wasn't sure yet what it was. Food, certainly. Shelter, safety. But maybe also something more. Maybe they needed to see what I'd forgotten. That life could be bigger than routine. That a person could want things, create things, become things. Even at 62. I finished my wine and set the empty glass on the porch railing. Tomorrow, I'd call Bryn again. Tomorrow, I'd figure out the logistics. Clothes, activities, meals, schedules. Tomorrow, I'd be the grandmother they needed. But tonight, I just sat in my dead husband's chair, and looked at the wild garden and wondered if maybe, just maybe, this wasn't a burden after all. Maybe it was a chance, the kind you get only once, and only if you're paying attention. I stayed out there until the mosquitoes drove me inside, until the wine made me tired enough to sleep. And when I finally climbed into bed, I did something I hadn't done in 2 years. I set my alarm for 6 a.m. Tomorrow, I decided, would start early. Tomorrow, things would be different. The alarm went off at 6, and for a disorienting moment, I forgot why I'd set it. Then I heard the creak of floorboards above me. Someone was awake. I dragged myself out of bed, pulled on the same jeans I'd worn yesterday, and headed downstairs. Mason was in the kitchen, standing on his tiptoes trying to reach the cabinet where I kept the cereal. He froze when he heard me, like he'd been caught stealing. "Morning, sweetheart," I said, my voice still rough with sleep. "What are you looking for?" "Cereal, but I can't reach." I pulled down the box of Cheerios. Plain, unsweetened. Probably not what he was hoping for. His face confirmed it. "Is this all you have?" "Afraid so. I'm not much of a breakfast person anymore." I glanced at the clock on the microwave. 6:17 a.m. "You're up early." He shrugged, climbing onto a chair. "I always wake up early. Mom says I'm annoying." The casual way he said it, like it was just a fact about himself, not a wound, made my chest hurt. I poured him a bowl of cereal and added milk, then surprised myself by pulling out a second bowl for me. We ate in the quiet morning light, the kind of silence that feels okay because it's not trying to be anything else. Through the kitchen window, I could see the sun just starting to pink up the sky. The neighborhood was still asleep. Somewhere, a bird was testing out its morning song. "Grandma?" Mason said through a mouthful of Cheerios. What are we gonna do today?" It was such a simple question, but I realized I had absolutely no idea how to answer it. What did kids do during summer? What did anyone do during summer? "Well," I said slowly, buying time. "What do you like to do?" "I like video games. And YouTube, and sometimes I like to build things with Legos, but Mom threw away most of my Legos because they were all over the floor." Of course she did. I thought of Bryn's house, the pristine white furniture, the abstract art on the walls, everything carefully curated and controlled. No room for mess. No room for childhood, really. "I don't have video games," I admitted. "Or Legos. But maybe we could build something else." His eyes brightened. "Like what?" I looked around the kitchen, searching for inspiration. My gaze landed on the window, and beyond it, the disaster of the backyard. "Like a garden?" "A garden?" He sounded skeptical. "Sure. We could plant vegetables, tomatoes, maybe, cucumbers, lettuce, and then we could eat what we grow." He considered this seriously, chewing slowly. "That sounds like work." "It is work," I said. "But it's the good kind. The kind where you can see what you made." "Okay," he said. Not exactly excited, but not opposed either. "Can we start today?" "We can start right now if you want." By the time Harper shuffled downstairs at almost 10 o'clock, Mason and I were already in the backyard covered in dirt. We'd cleared one of the smaller raised beds. Robert had built 4 of them years ago, and they'd been sitting empty since I couldn't remember when. The soil was dry and hard, but we'd loosened it with a hand trowel and mixed in some old compost I found in a bin by the garage. Harper stood on the back porch in pajama shorts and a tank top, squinting against the sunlight. "What are you doing?" "Gardening," Mason called out, grinning. His face was smudged with dirt. His Spider-Man shirt was filthy. He looked happy. "It's so hot," Harper complained, but she came down the steps anyway, drawn by curiosity or boredom, or maybe just the gravitational pull of not wanting to be alone inside. "We're going to plant vegetables," I explained, wiping sweat from my forehead with the back of my hand. "Want to help?" She looked at the dirt under my fingernails, at Mason's grimy knees, at the sad patch of turned earth. "Not really." "Fair enough. There's cereal inside if you're hungry." She lingered, though, stood there in the shade of the apple tree watching us. After a few minutes, she asked, "What kind of vegetables?" "Tomatoes, I think. Maybe some herbs. Whatever we can find at the garden center." "Mom hates tomatoes." "Good thing she's not here, then." Harper's mouth twitched, almost a smile. "Can I come? To the garden center?" Of course. The garden center was a local place off Powell Boulevard, family-owned, the kind with greenhouses that smelled like wet earth and growth. The owner, a weathered man named Jerry who remembered me from years ago, helped us pick out starter plants, cherry tomatoes, basil, cilantro, a cucumber plant that was already flowering. You want to get them in the ground soon, Jerry advised. It's late in the season, but you'll still get something if you're diligent. Diligent. I tried to remember the last time I'd been diligent about anything. Harper surprised me by asking questions. How much sun did Basil need? Did cucumbers grow on vines? Could you grow strawberries in July? Jerry answered patiently, and I watched my granddaughter absorb information with the same intensity she brought to her phone screen. Mason wanted everything. Pumpkins. Too late, Jerry said. Watermelons. Not enough space. Sunflowers. Possible if we hurried. We compromised on a packet of sunflower seeds and a small pepper plant that Jerry threw in for free. On the drive home, the backseat full of plants and potting soil, Harper asked, "Did you used to garden before?" Before what? Before, I don't know. Before now. Your grandpa and I used to. We had a pretty good vegetable garden for a few years. Tomatoes, zucchini, green beans. But after he died, I just let it go. Why? It was such a direct question. Kids asked things adults had learned not to. I guess I didn't see the point, I said. Just me eating the vegetables. Seemed like a lot of work for nothing. But you're doing it now, Mason pointed out from the back seat. Yeah, I said. I guess I am. We spent the afternoon planting. It was hot, genuinely hot. The kind of Portland summer heat that made you understand why people complained about it, even though it was nothing compared to Arizona or Texas. We took breaks in the shade, drank water from the hose, got completely filthy. Harper started out just watching, but eventually she knelt down next to me and helped firm the soil around a tomato plant. Her hands were careful, precise. Like this? She asked. Perfect. By dinner time, we had a respectable little garden. 4 tomato plants, the cucumber, herbs and terracotta pots on the porch, and pepper plant near the fence. Mason had planted the sunflower seeds in a row along the side of the house, marking each spot with a popsicle stick. How long until they grow? He asked. Depends, I said. Some things take weeks. Some things take months. You have to be patient. He looked disappointed, but not defeated. I can be patient. We tracked dirt through the house on our way to wash up. I thought about scolding them, making them take off their shoes, but I didn't. What did it matter? I could vacuum. I could mop. The dirt would come up. And in the meantime, it was proof that something had happened today. That we'd done something. For dinner, I made tacos. Nothing fancy, just ground beef and shells and whatever toppings I could scrounge from the fridge and pantry. Harper ate 2. Mason ate 4. We sat at the kitchen table with the windows open, a box fan pushing hot air around, and nobody looked at their phones. This is good, Mason said, cheese dripping down his chin. Thanks, bud. Harper was quieter, pushing lettuce around her plate. Finally, she said, Grandma? Yeah? Do you think Mom's okay? The question caught me off guard. I'd been trying not to think about Bryn, trying not to let my anger at her choices poison the time with these kids. But Harper was worried. Of course she was. She was 11 years old and her mother had vanished. I think she's fine, I said carefully. I think she's probably drinking fruity drinks by a pool somewhere and not worrying about anything. That's what makes me mad, Harper said. She's not worrying, about us, I mean. Mason's face crumpled. She's worrying a little bit, right, Grandma? I looked at him, this sweet 8-year-old boy who still wanted to believe his mother loved him enough to worry. And I wanted to lie. Wanted to build that soft wall of protection that parents and grandparents are supposed to build around children. But I also remembered what Harper had said the night before. She does this. These kids already knew the truth. Protecting them from it now would just teach them not to trust their own perceptions. I think your mom loves you very much, I said slowly. And I think she's complicated. She's dealing with her own stuff in ways that aren't always fair to you. But that doesn't mean you did anything wrong. You understand that, right? This isn't about you. Harper's eyes got shiny. She blinked fast, refusing to cry. Yeah. And in the meantime, you've got me. And we're going to have a good summer, okay? Okay, Mason whispered. Harper just nodded. That night, after the kids were in bed, I finally got a call from Bryn. I was on the back porch again. Had started making it a habit. Sitting out there with a glass of wine and the crickets for company. Mom, sorry it took me so long to call back. It's been crazy. I could hear music in the background, laughter, the clink of glasses. She sounded loose, happy, slightly drunk. Where are you? I asked, keeping my voice level. Barcelona! Oh my God! Mom, it's gorgeous. You would love it. The architecture, the food. We had this paella tonight that was just incredible. Bryn, we need to talk about the kids. Oh, they're fine, right? I knew you'd take care of them. You're so good at that stuff. That stuff. Like raising children was equivalent to organizing a pantry or balancing a checkbook. How long am I keeping them? Oh, just for the summer. It's only like 8 weeks. You said yourself you didn't have plans. I didn't say that. You didn't give me a chance to say anything. There was a pause. I heard her say something to someone in the background, laughing. Then back to me. Mom, don't be dramatic. It's not a big deal. The kids love you. And honestly, they were driving me crazy. Tyler and I needed this time. Tyler, her boyfriend of 6 months, the one who worked in tech and wore expensive sneakers and had never once asked the kids how their day was. So, this is a vacation with Tyler. It's a trip, yes. We're exploring Europe. We might go to Greece next, we haven't decided. Isn't that exciting? And what about Mason's therapy appointments? He has that anxiety therapist he sees every Tuesday. Oh, he can skip a few weeks, it's fine. And Harper's orthodontist? Didn't she just get her braces tightened? Mom, Bryn's voice took on that edge, the one that meant I was being inconvenient. You're making this into something it's not. The kids are fine. They're with their grandmother who loves them. Just let them have a normal summer. I wanted to scream, wanted to reach through the phone and shake her. But I kept my voice steady, the way I'd learned to do over 40 years of managing Bryn's chaos. What do they need? Clothes? Activities? Do they have insurance cards? Medications? Everything's in their suitcases. And there's a folder in Harper's bag with all the important stuff. Insurance cards, doctor info, all that. I'm not a monster, Mom. No one said you were, I thought. But you're not winning any awards either. When are you coming back? End of August. I'll text you the exact dates. Love you. Give the kids kisses for me. She hung up before I could respond. I sat there with the phone in my hand, staring at the screen. End of August. Almost 3 months. 3 months of being the primary caregiver for 2 children I barely knew, because my daughter couldn't be bothered to parent them during their summer vacation. You don't do anything anyway. The words cycled back, sharper now. She really believed it. Believed that my time, my life, my personhood were so negligible that absorbing her children for an entire summer was no imposition at all. I finished my wine in one long swallow and went inside. The rest of that first week fell into an accidental rhythm. We watered the garden every morning. We made simple meals. We sat on the porch during the hottest part of the afternoon, reading books or just watching the neighborhood move around us. I taught Mason to make scrambled eggs. Harper learned how to use the washing machine after declaring that all her clothes smelled weird. On Thursday, I took them to St. Anthony's with me for the food pantry shift. I'd told the coordinator I'd be out for the summer, but Mason had asked what I usually did on Thursdays, and when I told him about the pantry, he said he wanted to help. The church basement was cool and dim, rows of shelves stocked with canned goods, pasta, rice, diapers. My usual partner, a woman named Carol with gray curls and a perpetual smile, raised her eyebrows when she saw me walk in with the kids. Linda, I thought you were taking the summer off. Change of plans, I said. These are my grandkids, Mason and Harper. They're staying with me for a while. Carol's face lit up. Oh, how wonderful. We can always use extra hands. The kids surprised me. Mason took to it immediately, carefully stacking cans in the boxes we prepared for families. Harper was more reserved, but I caught her talking quietly to a little girl who came in with her mother, complimenting the girl's butterfly hair clips. Afterward, Carol pulled me aside. It's good to see you with them, she said. You look different. Happier, maybe. I'm exhausted, I said honestly. Well, yes, but also happy. I thought about it on the drive home. Mason chattering in the back seat about how many boxes we'd packed, Harper quietly looking out the window. Was I happier? I was definitely more tired, more stressed, more uncertain about every single decision I made. But I also wasn't lonely. The house didn't echo anymore. There were dishes in the sink and toys, well, not toys, but shoes and books and random kid debris scattered around. There was noise. There was need. Maybe Carol was right. Friday afternoon, I was in the hallway closet looking for extra towels when I found them. The boxes I'd shoved in there 2 years ago, the ones I couldn't bear to unpack after Robert died, because unpacking them meant accepting that he was really gone. But one of the boxes wasn't Robert's things. It was mine. I pulled it out, sat on the hallway floor, and opened it like it might contain something dangerous. Inside, Paintbrushes, old and new, some with bristles stiff from disuse. Tubes of acrylic paint, some dried out, some still pliable. A palette knife. Sketch pads. And at the bottom, wrapped in an old t-shirt, 3 small canvases I'd bought at an art supply store in 1987. I'd been 24. Bryn was a baby. Robert was working long hours at the manufacturing plant, and I was home all day with a colicky infant who never slept. I'd started taking an art class on Wednesday nights, the only night Robert's mother could watch Bryn. For 3 months, I'd painted. Nothing good, really. But it had felt like breathing after being underwater. Then Robert's mom got sick. The class ended. I packed the supplies away and told myself I'd get back to it later. 38 years later, here they were, waiting. I carried the box downstairs. The kids were in the living room, Harper reading a book, Mason coloring in a coloring book I'd found at the dollar store. They looked up when I came in with the box. "What's that?" Mason asked. "Art supplies," I said. "I used to paint. A long time ago." Harper set down her book. "Can I see?" I opened the box on the coffee table. They peered in, curious. Harper picked up a brush, testing the bristles. "These are nice. Some of them are probably ruined, but we could see what still works." "Can we paint something?" Mason asked. I hadn't planned on it, hadn't planned on any of this, but I heard myself say, "Sure, why not?" We set up in the backyard, 3 canvases on old newspapers spread across the patio table. I mixed colors on the palette, testing which paints were still usable, showing the kids how to load a brush, how to blend, how to layer. Mason painted flowers, enthusiastic, messy, joyful blobs of red and yellow. Harper worked slowly, carefully, painting the apple tree in precise detail. I started with the fence, then abandoned it and painted the garden instead, the little green plants we'd put in the ground just days ago. We didn't talk much, just painted. The afternoon sun slanted golden across the yard. Somewhere, a lawnmower hummed. The smell of paint mixed with the smell of fresh-cut grass and the herbs on the porch. When we finally stopped, it was almost dinner time. We stood back and looked at our work, 3 different visions of the same small world. "These are good," Harper said, and she sounded surprised. Not at our paintings, but at herself. At the fact that she'd made something. "Yeah," I agreed. "They are." That night, we hung them on the refrigerator with magnets like they were school projects worth displaying. Mason's flowers, Harper's tree, my garden. Evidence that we'd been here, that we'd done something, that we were, slowly, becoming something together. The second week brought complications I hadn't anticipated. Mason's anxiety manifested in nightmares. He'd wake up crying, convinced something terrible had happened to his mother. Harper grew quieter, more withdrawn, spending hours on her phone texting friends who were doing normal summer things while she was stuck with her grandmother. And I was exhausted. Not just physically, though, that was real. The constant cooking, cleaning, mediating, entertaining. But emotionally. I'd forgotten how much energy children required, how they filled every corner of your life until there was no corner left that was just yours. On Tuesday morning, I found Harper sitting on the porch steps at 6 a.m., still in her pajamas, tears streaming down her face. She was clutching her phone. "Honey, what's wrong?" I sat down beside her, my knees cracking in protest. "Kayla's birthday party is today," she said, her voice thick. "They're all going to the beach. Everyone. And I'm not there." I put my arm around her shoulders. She didn't pull away. "I'm sorry. Mom knew about this party. I told her weeks ago. She knew, and she didn't care." Harper's hands were shaking. "She just left anyway." What could I say? That Bryn loved her? Harper already knew that, and it wasn't enough. Love without presence was just a word. "She should have told you," I said instead. "She should have asked what you wanted. That wasn't fair." Harper looked at me, surprised that I wasn't defending Bryn. "Everyone thinks she's so cool. My friends, their moms, they're all like, 'Your mom is so young and pretty and fun.' But they don't see this part. They don't see her just leaving." "I know. Did she do this to you? When she was a kid?" The question hit deeper than she probably intended. "Different things," I said carefully. "But yes, she was always hard to hold on to, even when she was little." We sat there as the neighborhood woke up around us. A jogger passed. A car backed out of a driveway across the street. The morning was already getting hot. "I wish I could fix this for you," I said finally, "but I can't. I can't make your mom different, and I can't give you back the party. But I can tell you that it's okay to be angry, and it's okay to be sad. You don't have to pretend it's fine when it's not. Harper wiped her face with the heel of her hand. Thanks, Grandma. And for what it's worth, you're not stuck with me. You're with me. There's a difference. She almost smiled. What's the difference? Stuck means you're trapped. With means you're choosing to stay, even if you didn't choose to come. That's pretty philosophical for 6 in the morning. I have my moments. That afternoon, I made a decision. I called my sister Janet, who lived in Seattle and always had opinions about everything. Linda, how are the kids? Challenging, I said honestly. Janet, I need advice. What do I do with an 11-year-old who's missing her whole summer? And an 8-year-old who has nightmares every night? Jesus, Bryn really just dumped them on you? For the whole summer. Janet made a disgusted sound. That girl, I love her, but she's something else. You know what you need? You need to give those kids experiences, not fancy stuff. Experiences. Things they'll remember. Things that matter. Like what? I don't know. You're the one with them. What did you do when Bryn was little? I tried to remember. Most of Bryn's childhood was a blur of exhaustion and financial stress. Single mom, working double shifts, trying to keep us afloat. But there were moments. We used to go to the coast, I said slowly. Every summer, we'd drive to Cannon Beach and spend the day. She loved looking for sand dollars. So take them to the beach. Janet, I'm 62. I don't know if I have the energy to... Linda. Her voice was firm. You have 2 kids who need to know that their summer isn't ruined just because their mother is selfish. Take them to the damn beach. After we hung up, I sat with the idea. The coast was 2 hours away. I'd have to pack food, towels, sunscreen, deal with traffic and parking and sand everywhere. It sounded overwhelming. But Harper's face this morning, Mason's nightmares, they needed something. And maybe I did too. I found them in the backyard, checking on the garden. The tomato plants had grown noticeably. Little yellow flowers appearing. The sunflowers were starting to sprout, tiny green shoots breaking through the soil. Hey, I said. How do you guys feel about going to the beach tomorrow? Mason's head snapped up. The beach? Really? Harper looked skeptical. Which beach? Cannon Beach. It's about 2 hours away. We can leave early, spend the day, come back before dinner. Can I look for shells? Mason asked. You can look for whatever you want. Harper was quiet, but I saw something shift in her face. Not quite excitement, but something close. Hope, maybe. Okay, she said. That sounds... okay. We left at 7 the next morning, the car packed with towels, a cooler full of sandwiches and water bottles, an old beach umbrella I found in the garage. The drive took us through farmland and forest. Then suddenly the landscape opened up, and there was the ocean, vast and gray-blue under a cloudy sky. Cannon Beach was already busy by the time we arrived, families claiming their spots on the sand. But we found a place near the base of Haystack Rock, that massive monolith rising out of the surf like something from a fantasy story. Mason ran straight for the water, stopping just before the waves reached his feet, then shrieking and running back when they chased him. Harper set up her towel with careful precision, then sat down and just looked at the ocean. You okay? I asked, settling onto my own towel beside her. Yeah. She pulled her knees up to her chest. It's just really big. The ocean? Everything. The ocean, the sky, all of it. Makes you feel small. In a bad way? She thought about it. No, I don't know. Like your problems are small too, maybe. We watched Mason play in the surf, his laughter carrying over the sound of waves. Other kids joined him, an impromptu pack of children who didn't need introductions, just the shared joy of cold water and sand. Harper eventually got up and walked down to join them. I watched her wade into the foam, careful at first, then braver. A wave knocked her sideways and she came up laughing. Actually laughing. And I realized I hadn't heard that sound from her since she'd arrived. I stayed on the towel, feeling the sun break through the clouds and warm my face. Around me, families were doing the same things people had done on this beach for generations. Building sandcastles, throwing frisbees, eating sandy sandwiches. Simple things. Things that didn't cost much, but somehow meant everything. An older couple sat up nearby, spreading out a blanket with the ease of long practice. The man had white hair and sun-spotted hands. The woman wore a floppy hat and a smile that suggested she'd been smiling like that for 50 years. They moved around each other in that synchronized way long-married couples do, anticipating needs, finishing gestures. Robert and I used to be like that. Before the heart attack stole him from me in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon. No warning, no goodbye. I'd been angry at first. Angry at him for leaving. Angry at God for taking him. Angry at myself for not seeing it coming. Then the anger had faded into numbness, and the numbness into this empty routine I'd been living. But sitting here, watching my grandchildren play in the ocean, I felt something crack open in my chest. Not grief, exactly. More like the space where grief had been, suddenly letting in light. Mom would never do this, Harper said. She'd come back, dripping wet, her hair plastered to her head. Do what? Just sit on a beach. She'd be on her phone the whole time, taking pictures for Instagram, checking work emails. She can't just be anywhere. It was true. Bryn had always been like that, even as a child. Restless, chasing something she could never quite name. Your mom has a hard time being still, I said. She's afraid if she stops moving, she'll have to think about things she doesn't want to think about. What things? I don't know. That's the problem. She won't stop long enough to figure it out. Harper sat down, wrapping herself in her towel. Do you think she misses us? The real question underneath, do you think she loves us enough? I think she misses you in her own way, I said. But I also think she's not very good at missing people. She's good at moving forward, at forgetting what's behind her. It's how she survives. That sounds lonely. It is. Mason ran up then, covered in sand, holding something in his cupped hands. Grandma, look! He opened his palms carefully. Inside was a sand dollar, perfect and whole, pale white against his pink skin. Mason, that's beautiful. His smile was so wide it looked like it might split his face. Can I keep it? Of course. He ran off to look for more, and I watched him go. This little boy who I barely knew 3 weeks ago, who was now such a constant presence in my life that I couldn't imagine the house without him. Grandma? Harper said quietly. Yeah? Thanks for bringing us here. You're welcome, sweetheart. And thanks for, I don't know, not being like her. I looked at Harper, really looked at her. This kid who was too wise for 11, who'd learned too young that love doesn't always look like presents, who was trying so hard to be okay with something that wasn't okay. Harper, I need to tell you something. I waited until she met my eyes. Your mom and I were different people. And that's not a judgment on her or a compliment to me. It's just true. But you need to know that whatever mistakes she makes, whatever ways she fails you, it's not because you're not worth staying for. You understand that? Her eyes got shiny. Yeah. Good. Now go find your brother before he gets swept out to sea. She managed a wet laugh and jogged off toward the water. We stayed until late afternoon, until the sun started its descent, and the beach began to empty. The drive home was quiet. Both kids passed out in the back seat before we even reached the highway, exhausted in that good way that comes from salt water and fresh air. I drove through the fading light, past farms where horses stood still as statues, past roadside fruit stands and hand-painted signs for You Pick Berries. The radio played softly, some classic rock station, songs I remembered from when I was young and the whole world felt possible. When we got home, I had to wake the kids up, half carry Mason into the house while Harper stumbled behind us like a sleepwalker. I got them into their pajamas, brushed the worst of the sand from their hair, and tucked them into bed. Mason was asleep before I turned off the light, but Harper caught my hand as I was leaving. Grandma, can we go back sometime? To the beach? Absolutely. And can we not tell Mom about today? I don't want her to think we're having fun without her. The request broke my heart. This child, trying to protect her mother's feelings even when her mother couldn't be bothered to protect hers. We don't have to tell her anything you don't want to tell her, I said. Okay. She rolled over, pulling the quilt up to her chin. Night. Night, sweetheart. The next morning, I woke up to my phone buzzing. Multiple texts from Bryn, sent at various hours of the night. She was 7 hours ahead in Greece now. Mom, the kids haven't been answering my texts. Are they okay? Can you make sure they respond? I'm worried. Also, Harper needs to text Kayla back. It's rude to ignore people. I stared at the messages, feeling anger build in my chest like pressure in a kettle. She was worried now, after weeks of radio silence, and she was concerned about Harper's texting etiquette. I called her. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Then her face appeared on the screen, golden hour light behind her, some picturesque Greek island view. Mom, finally. Are the kids? The kids are fine, I said, my voice harder than I'd intended. They're asleep. Oh good, can you wake them? I want to FaceTime. No. Bryn blinked. What? No, Bryn. I'm not waking them up. It's 6 in the morning here. They're tired. They had a big day yesterday. Doing what? We went to the beach. Cannon Beach. Remember when we used to go there? Oh. She looked uncomfortable suddenly. That's nice. But I really need to talk to them. Harper hasn't responded to any of my messages, and maybe that's because she's hurt, I said. The words came out before I could stop them. Maybe it's because you dropped them here without asking, without considering what they wanted, and then disappeared for weeks. Mom, don't be dramatic. I text them every day. Texting isn't parenting, Bryn. Silence. Her face had gone tight. What's that supposed to mean? It means they miss you. It means Harper cried on the porch because you knew about Kayla's birthday party and left anyway. It means Mason has nightmares. It means they need their mother, and you're not here. I'm giving them a break from me. They're probably happier there anyway. Harper's always saying she hates me, and Mason, they don't hate you. They're hurt. There's a difference. Bryn's eyes were shiny now. You don't understand. You don't know what it's like trying to be everything for them all the time. I needed this. I needed space. Then you should have told them that. You should have sat them down and explained, not just dropped them on my doorstep like packages. I knew you'd make this about me somehow. I knew you'd find a way to make me the bad guy. I'm not making you anything. I'm telling you what's happening. Your kids are here, and they're dealing with feelings they don't know how to process, and I'm the one helping them because you're not. Well, maybe that's what you wanted, Bryn shot back. Maybe this is finally your chance to be the mother you never were to me. The words landed like a slap. I felt my breath catch, felt something in my chest go cold. What? You were never there, Mom. You were always working, always tired, always somewhere else. So don't lecture me about parenting when you barely managed it yourself. I wanted to scream, wanted to throw the phone, wanted to reach through the screen and shake her until she understood what she was saying. But instead, I just felt tired and sad and done. I was working 3 jobs to keep a roof over our heads after your father left, I said quietly. I was 27 years old with no college degree and a 6-year-old to raise alone. I did the best I could. And I'm doing the best I can, Bryn said, but her voice wavered. No, honey. You're doing what's easiest. There's a difference. I hung up before she could respond. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time, watching the sun rise through the window, turning the kitchen gold. My hands were shaking. My chest felt tight. Everything Bryn had said played on repeat in my head. You were never there. Maybe this is your chance to be the mother you never were. Had I failed her that badly? Had I been so consumed with survival that I'd missed her childhood entirely? But then I thought about those years. The double shifts at the hospital. The nights I came home so tired I could barely stand, and still made her dinner, checked her homework, read her stories. The birthday cakes I baked at midnight because I hadn't had time during the day. The school plays I rearranged my schedule to attend. The sacrifices I made over and over because she was everything to me. Maybe it wasn't enough. Maybe she needed more than I could give. But it was everything I had. I heard footsteps on the stairs. Mason appeared in the doorway, rubbing his eyes. Grandma? Why are you crying? I hadn't realized I was. I wiped my face quickly. Just thinking about grown-up stuff, bud. He climbed onto my lap. Too big for it, really, but I wrapped my arms around him and he smelled like salt and sleep and little boy. Are you sad? He asked. A little bit. About my mom? Kids. They always knew. Yeah, I admitted. About your mom. She makes people sad a lot, he said matter-of-factly. Then, but you make me happy. I held him tighter. You make me happy too. And I realized it was true. Despite everything, the exhaustion, the frustration, the anger at Bryn, I was happier than I'd been in years. These kids had given me something I didn't know I'd lost. Purpose. Not the obligation kind. The kind I'd felt with Bryn where everything was survival. But the real kind. The kind that made you want to get up in the morning. Harper came downstairs and I made them pancakes from scratch, and we ate breakfast in the morning sunlight streaming through the kitchen window. And I decided something. I was done apologizing, done explaining, done trying to make myself smaller so other people could feel bigger. Bryn could be angry. She could feel however she needed to feel. But I was keeping these kids safe. I was showing them what it meant to be present. And I wasn't going to let anyone, not even my daughter, make me feel guilty about it. The summer wasn't half over yet, and I was just getting started. The weeks after the phone call with Bryn felt different. Lighter somehow, despite the weight of what had been said. I stopped checking my phone obsessively. Stopped crafting careful responses to her sporadic texts. Stopped trying to manage her feelings while neglecting my own. The kids noticed. "You seem different," Harper said one morning while we were weeding the garden together. The tomatoes were heavy on the vines now, splitting their skins with ripeness. Different how? She pulled a dandelion, shaking dirt from its roots. Less worried, I guess. Like you're not waiting for something bad to happen. Maybe I'm not, I said. The truth was, I'd spent most of my life in a state of anticipatory dread, waiting for Robert to get sick, waiting for Bryn to need something, waiting for the next crisis, the next demand, the next thing that would require me to shrink myself to make room. But something had shifted in that phone call. When Bryn accused me of not being there, of failing her, instead of collapsing under the weight of that guilt, I'd felt something else. Clarity. I had been there. Every single day of her childhood. I'd been there in the ways that mattered. And if she couldn't see that, couldn't acknowledge the magnitude of what I'd sacrificed, then that was her blindness to carry, not mine. July deepened into August, and the rhythm we'd found became something more permanent. Mason's nightmares stopped. Harper started leaving her phone on the kitchen counter during the day, joining us in the garden without being asked. We fell into rituals that had their own quiet magic. Morning coffee on the back porch, watching the sunflowers turn their faces toward the light. Afternoon painting sessions, all three of us working in comfortable silence. Evening walks around the neighborhood, saying hello to Mrs. Chen, waving to the joggers, watching the light change from gold to purple. I taught them to cook real meals. Not just spaghetti and grilled cheese, but chicken piccata, homemade bread, vegetable soup from our own tomatoes and herbs. Mason became obsessed with baking, following recipes with the intense focus he brought to everything. Harper discovered she had a gift for seasoning, tasting, and adjusting until things were perfect. We turned the dining room into a library, hauling boxes of books from garage sales and used bookstores. Harper read constantly now. Mysteries, fantasy, thick novels with cracked spines. Mason preferred books about space, about dinosaurs, about how things worked. I found myself reading again too, things I'd meant to read for years but never had time for. On Thursdays, we volunteered at St. Anthony's. The kids had become regulars, known by name. Mason had made friends with an elderly man named Mr. Foster who came in every week for a food box and always had a new joke to tell. Harper had started helping Carol organize the inventory system, her natural precision making her invaluable. "Your grandmother raised you right," Carol told Harper one afternoon. Harper glanced at me, a small smile playing at her lips. "She's teaching me." The garden became our shared project, the thing we checked on multiple times a day, like it was a pet that needed tending. The tomatoes produced faster than we could eat them, so we started making sauce, filling mason jars that lined the pantry shelves. The cucumbers turned into pickles. The basil became pesto. Every plant was a lesson in patience, in trust, in the simple faith that if you do your part, nature will do hers. The sunflowers grew taller than Mason, their faces as wide as dinner plates. He measured them every few days with a tape measure, recording the numbers in a notebook with the seriousness of a scientist. 9 feet, 3 inches, he announced one morning. That's taller than Dad. It was the first time either of them had mentioned their father in weeks. Harper looked up sharply, but Mason didn't seem bothered by it. "Your dad's tall?" I asked carefully. "Yeah, but he lives in California now, with his new family." The casual way he said it, new family, like it was a shirt you could change, broke my heart, but I kept my voice steady. "Do you see him much?" "Not really. He sends birthday cards sometimes." Mason squinted up at the sunflower. "I think this one's going to make seeds we can plant next year." Next year. The assumption that this would continue, that we'd be here together doing this again, made my throat tight. I started painting seriously again. Not just the afternoon sessions with the kids, but late at night, after they were in bed. Standing at the easel I'd set up in the corner of the living room, I painted the garden in different lights. Morning, noon, sunset. I painted the kids' hands covered in dirt. I painted Haystack Rock from memory. I painted Robert, or tried to, but I couldn't get his eyes right, so I painted around where they should be, leaving negative space that somehow said more than details would have. Harper found me one night, past midnight, still working on a canvas. She stood in the doorway in her pajamas, watching. Couldn't sleep? I asked. I heard you moving around. She came closer, studying what I was painting. The backyard at dusk, shadows long across the grass. It's really good, Grandma. Thanks. Did you always want to be an artist, like when you were my age? I considered the question. I did, but then life happened. Your mom, bills, work. Art felt like a luxury I couldn't afford. But you're doing it now. I am. Why now? I set down my brush and really looked at her. Almost 12 now, taller than when she'd arrived. Something different in her face. More settled, more herself. Because I remembered something, I said. I remembered that I'm not just someone's mother or someone's grandmother or someone's widow. I'm also Linda. And Linda wanted to paint. Harper was quiet for a moment. Mom's always saying she doesn't have time for things she wants to do, but I think she just doesn't know what she wants. That's very perceptive. I don't want to be like that. I want to know what I want. What do you want? She thought about it. I want to feel okay. Not happy all the time or whatever, just okay. Like I don't have to worry about everything falling apart. I pulled her into a hug. She let me, even rested her head on my shoulder. That's a good thing to want, I said into her hair. That's a very good thing. The last week of August arrived with no warning, the way endings always do. Suddenly it was Thursday, and Bryn was texting that she'd be home Saturday, that she couldn't wait to see the kids, that she'd missed them so much. I showed the kids the texts. They read them in silence. Harper's face unreadable. Mason's crumpling slowly. I don't want to go, Mason said, his voice small. I know, Bud. Can we stay here? Just a little longer? That's not my decision, I said, even though I wanted to say yes. Even though I wanted to keep them here, in this house that felt alive again, in this life we'd built together. Harper was staring at her phone. She says she can't wait to tell us about Greece, about all the adventures she had. The bitterness in her voice was new. Or maybe not new. Maybe it had always been there and she was just finally letting it show. Are you going to tell her? I asked. About our summer? Tell her what? That we learned to garden? That we painted? That we were fine without her? Harper's eyes were bright with anger. She won't care, Grandma. She'll make it about her somehow. How hard it was for her. How much she needed this. She always does. I wanted to tell her she was wrong, but I couldn't. Because she wasn't. Friday, we harvested the last of the tomatoes. The plants were dying back now, their leaves yellowing, their work done. We picked everything that was ripe and some that weren't, filling 2 large bowls with red and orange and green. We grew these, Mason said wonderingly, holding a perfect tomato up to the light. We actually grew these. You did, I agreed. We made sauce that afternoon, all 3 of us in the kitchen, the smell of cooking tomatoes filling the house. We jarred it carefully, labeled each one with the date. 12 jars. Proof that we'd been here, that we'd done this work, that something good had grown from the time we'd spent together. That night, I made a special dinner. Lasagna with our tomato sauce. Bread I'd taught Mason to make. Salad from the garden. We ate slowly, nobody saying what we were all thinking. This was the last meal. After dinner, Harper helped me clean up while Mason finished a drawing he'd been working on. All 3 of us in the garden, rendered in careful colored pencil. Grandma? Harper's hands were in the soapy water, scrubbing a plate. Can I ask you something? Of course. Do you think Mom will be different after this? I wanted to lie. Wanted to tell her yes. This would be a wake-up call. Bryn would see what she'd almost lost and change, but I'd promised these kids honesty. I don't know, I said. Change is hard, especially when you don't think you need to. So probably not. Probably not. Harper nodded like this confirmed something she already knew. Then I'm going to be different. I'm going to be different from her. You already are. She looked at me surprised. You're here, I said. You're present. You see people. That's everything. We packed their bags that night, though none of us wanted to. I folded their clothes, so much more than they'd arrived with. Things we'd bought at thrift stores and Target, new school clothes for fall. Everything smelled like my laundry detergent, like this house, like this summer. Mason put his sand dollar in a special box, wrapped in tissue paper. Harper packed her notebooks, full now with stories, recipes, observations about the garden. They took their paintings, carefully rolled and secured with rubber bands. Can we take some tomatoes? Mason asked, to show her what we grew. Of course, we'll pack a jar of sauce too. But even as I said it, I knew. Bryn wouldn't see these things the way the kids did. She'd see tomatoes, not transformation. Sauce, not sacrifice. The whole summer would be reduced to, they had a nice time at Grandma's, and all the depth, all the growth, all the quiet revelations would be invisible to her. That was the tragedy of Bryn. Not that she was a bad person. She wasn't. But that she moved through life so fast she never saw what she was missing. Saturday morning arrived too soon. I woke before my alarm, before the sun, and lay in bed listening to the house. Soft breathing from down the hall, the tick of the kitchen clock, the ambient hum of existence. I got up and made coffee, sat on the back porch in the darkness. The garden was there, invisible but present. The sunflowers, the tomato plants, the evidence of our work. When the kids woke up, we made breakfast together one last time. Pancakes, bacon, scrambled eggs. We ate slowly, savoring. Nobody talked much. What was there to say? At 10, the doorbell rang. I opened the door, and there was Bryn. Golden tan, new haircut. Expensive sunglasses pushed up on her head. She looked rested, relaxed, like she'd just come from a spa instead of an 8-hour flight. Mom! She hugged me briefly, then pushed past into the house. Kids, where are you? Mommy missed you so much. Mason came down the stairs slowly, Harper behind him. Bryn swept Mason into her arms, covering his face with kisses. Oh, my baby, I missed you. Did you have fun with Grandma? Were you good? Yeah, Mason said quietly. Bryn set him down and turned to Harper, arms open. Harper accepted the hug but didn't return it, her arms stiff at her sides. Let me see you, Bryn said, holding Harper at arm's length. Did you grow? I swear you grew, and you got so tan. What did you guys do all summer? We gardened, Harper said flatly, and painted and cooked. Oh, how sweet, like little homesteaders. Bryn laughed, that tinkling laugh that had always annoyed me. Well, I have so much to tell you. Greece was absolutely incredible. We went to this island, Santorini, and the sunsets, oh my God. I took like 1,000 pictures, and Tyler proposed. She held up her left hand. A diamond caught the light, expensive and tasteless. Wow, Harper said without inflection. Congratulations. I know, right? So we might be doing a destination wedding next year. Maybe Italy. We're thinking spring. You kids could be in it, obviously. Mason looked like he might cry. Harper looked like she'd turned to stone. Bryn didn't notice. She was already moving toward the stairs. Are you packed? We should get going. I have so much to do. Unpack, do laundry, get you guys ready for school. It starts in 2 weeks. Can you believe it? The bags are in the guest room, I said. Perfect. Go get them, kids. Chop chop. They went upstairs. I heard their footsteps, slow and heavy. Bryn turned to me, her smile bright and meaningless. Thanks so much for doing this, Mom. I know it was a lot, but it was exactly what I needed. Tyler and I really reconnected, you know? And now with the engagement, everything's just falling into place. Bryn, oh, before I forget. She pulled out her phone, tapped at the screen. I'm Venmoing you some money, for expenses and stuff. I know kids are expensive. I don't want your money. She looked up, surprised. Don't be silly. You fed them for 2 months. The least I can do is... I don't want your money, I repeated. I want you to ask them about their summer. What? Your children. Ask them what they did, what they learned, what mattered to them. Bryn's smile tightened. Mom, I just got home. There's plenty of time for... There isn't, actually. There's never plenty of time. Time runs out. People die, kids grow up, and if you're not paying attention, you miss it. I don't know what you want me to say. I want you to say you see them, really see them. Not as accessories or obligations, but as people. The kids appeared at the top of the stairs, bags in hand. They came down slowly. Mason holding his box with the sand dollar. Harper clutching her notebooks. Bryn's face had gone tight. We should go. She ushered them toward the door, moving with that same frantic energy she always had when confronted with anything uncomfortable. Harper paused at the threshold, looked back at me. Bye, Grandma. Bye, sweetheart. Mason broke away from Bryn and ran back, threw his arms around my waist. I love you, he whispered. I love you too, bud. So much. Harper Mason car now, Bryn said, her voice sharp. They went. I stood in the doorway and watched them load into the SUV, watched Bryn pull away from the curb without looking back. The street swallowed them, and they were gone. The house felt cavernous in their absence. I walked through it slowly, touching things they'd touched. The kitchen table where we'd eaten so many meals, the easel in the living room, their paintings still propped against the wall, the guest room, neat now, empty again, Bryn's old trophies gathering dust. I went to the backyard. The garden was there, overgrown and wild and beautiful. The sunflowers stood tall, their heads heavy with seeds. Some of the tomato plants had fallen over, but others clung stubbornly to their stakes, still reaching toward the sun. I sat in Robert's chair and let myself cry. For the kids, for Bryn, for myself, for all the ways we fail each other despite our best intentions, but also for the small miracle of the summer, for the fact that 2 children had been given to me by accident, and I'd been given to them, and together we'd built something real, something that couldn't be taken away even now that they were gone. I'd shown them that a person could start over, could want things, could create beauty even in the midst of loss. And they'd shown me that I wasn't done yet, that at 62 I could still matter, could still be necessary, could still be Linda, not just someone's mother or widow or obligation. 3 days later, I got a text from Harper. Just a photo at first, the jar of tomato sauce we'd sent with them open on the kitchen counter. Then, Mom says it tastes weird. I think it tastes like summer. I smiled through tears and texted back, that's exactly what it tastes like. Another photo came through. The sand dollar sitting on Harper's windowsill. Then, I put it where I can see it. So I remember. Remember what? That good things can grow, even when you don't expect them. I stared at that message for a long time. Then I went to the hallway closet and pulled out the box of art supplies. I set up my easel on the back porch in the afternoon light, facing the garden, and I started to paint. Not because anyone asked me to. Not because I had to fill time or prove something or make myself useful, but because I wanted to. Because I was Linda Carmichael. I was 62 years old. I'd raised a difficult daughter and loved a good man and survived his death and discovered that I could still surprise myself. I could still say no. I could still want things. I could still begin again. The canvas was blank. The afternoon was long. The garden was there, waiting to be seen. I picked up my brush and began. 6 weeks later, school was in full swing and fall had arrived in Portland, painting the trees the same colors I was learning to mix on my palette. I'd painted every day since the kids left, sometimes for hours, filling canvases with gardens and seascapes and abstracts that came from somewhere deep I didn't know I had access to. On a Thursday evening, while I was cleaning brushes after a particularly good session, my phone rang. Harper's name on the screen. Grandma? Hey, sweetheart, how's school? Fine, boring. Listen, I need to ask you something. Okay. Mom's going to Italy next month, with Tyler, for wedding planning stuff. She wants to leave Mason and me with Tyler's parents, but... Her voice wavered. They're weird. They don't like kids. Mason's already having nightmares again. My heart clenched. Oh, honey. So I was wondering, could we maybe stay with you instead? I know it's a lot to ask, and you probably have stuff going on, but... Yes. What? Yes. Absolutely yes. When? She exhaled, relief obvious. Really? Really? You're always welcome here. Both of you. Anytime. Mom's going to be mad if I ask. Let her be mad. I'll handle it. There was a pause. Then quietly, thanks, Grandma. Thank you, I said, for trusting me, for calling. After we hung up, I stood at the kitchen window, looking out at the garden. The summer plants were done now, composting back into the earth. But the sunflowers had left seeds. Hundreds of them. Drying in the seed heads. Waiting for next spring. Waiting for next time. I called Carol at St. Anthony's and told her I'd be bringing the kids back in October. I called my sister Janet and told her I was thinking about teaching an art class at the senior center. I called the landlord of the small studio space I'd seen for rent downtown and asked if it was still available. Then I went upstairs to the guest room and made the beds with fresh sheets, put out new towels, cleared space in the closet. When Bryn called 2 days later to ask, not tell, but ask, which was progress, if I could take the kids in October, I said yes before she finished the question. You're sure? I know I just had them all summer. I'm sure. I don't know what I'd do without you, Mom. I could have said a lot of things. Could have reminded her that she'd survived fine without me for months at a time. Could have pointed out that she'd managed to plan an entire European vacation without my help. But I just said, the kids are always welcome here. Because that was the truth. Not that I was some saint, not that I didn't have my own life and needs, but that there was room in my life now. Room that hadn't existed before the summer. Room that the kids themselves had helped me create. After we hung up, I walked back down to the kitchen. There, on the refrigerator, held with magnets, were our paintings from that first week. Mason's flowers, Harper's tree, my garden, faded now, edges curling, but still there. Still proof that something had happened, that we had been changed. I made myself tea and took it to the back porch. The evening was cool, that perfect Oregon autumn cool where you need a sweater but not a coat. The garden was full of shadows. The apple tree was dropping its leaves, making a carpet of gold on the grass. And I sat there in Robert's chair, though I was starting to think of it as my chair now. And I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not the absence of struggle, not the numbing of pain, but the quiet knowledge that I was exactly where I needed to be, that I'd found my way back to myself through the unlikely gift of being needed. Bryn had said I didn't do anything anyway, and she'd been right, but not anymore. Now I painted, I gardened, I loved my grandchildren in ways their mother couldn't. I volunteered, I said no, I said yes. I made choices based on what I wanted, not just what others needed from me. I'd spent 62 years being the woman who said yes to everyone else. This summer, I'd finally learned to say yes to myself. The wind picked up, rustling through the dying tomato plants, carrying the scent of fallen apples and wood smoke from someone's fireplace. Somewhere in the neighborhood, a dog barked. A car door slammed, life continuing its ancient rhythms. And I sat there, Linda Carmichael, artist, grandmother, woman, complete and imperfect and enough, just as I was. Watching the light fade, waiting for October. Ready. You don't do anything anyway. Watch my kids this summer. She didn't let me answer, just closed the door and left. But when she came back, she turned pale at what I had done.